Hi, this is probably going to be one of my longer videos, so bear with me. Feel free to multitask, uh, do the dishes or just feel free to do something else whilst listening to this. As you can see, I'm in bed at the early hours here, but I wasn't sure about whether I even wanted to talk about this one because it's so depressing. To think about it, to think about the situation these men are in that I'm going to be talking about. Um, But I've always took an approach on this channel to not shy away from controversial topics, to not shy away from things that might be depressing, but I think they are important. So I'm referring to the three men captured by Russian separatists in Donetsk and Luhansk. Um, Before I get into that, the war is going on. I mean, It's I felt for a while now that there has been a risk of kind of war fatigue. Not the people on the ground, but those of us watching it. It's unfortunately just part of human nature that when the invasion happened, people were very sympathetic and an alarm going off. People were very sympathetic and it was huge news and people were shocked and there was an international response. But with wars, the longer they rumble on, sad reality is people lose interest because it's depressing and it's like the becoming the stagnant situation now. This is a very this is a very live situation, Zelensky's estimating 200 Ukrainian troops are dying a day. That's a shocking casualty figure. Russia's had enormous losses. So this Putin's war is proven to be very, very costly for both sides. But I think Russia's been badly humiliated. I mean, even the most hardcore Putin supporter can't deny that they were complacent. They thought they'd just walk over Ukraine. Now, a combination of the incredible courage of the Ukrainian people, the tenacity and toughness of Ukrainian soldiers, and yes, international support from Western allies like the UK has helped Ukraine to survive this long. And there's actually a chance that Ukraine might prevail. Now, that expression, there's no winners in war, is kind of true. And certainly there will be a lot of bitterness, very deep bitterness, for years to come. If your entire family had been killed by Russian troops, um, you don't get over something like that. That's going to take generations. I think it's going to be a bit like after World War Two, the bitterness towards Germans, in much of Europe. I think it's going to be like that for many Ukrainians. That's going to be their feelings towards Russia, understandably so. And unfortunately, it means that those anti-Putin Russians, those Russians who bravely spoken out, are going to be tarred with the same brush. Putin has condemned thousands and thousands and thousands, millions of people. He's an absolute tyrant, and I honestly believe if he falls, the world would be a better place. Um, but I want to focus on one specific issue, which is these captured men. Now, two of them are British, one of them is Moroccan. I'm going to just read out a little bit from LBC. By the way, before this report, I kind of thought some sort of prisoner exchange would be the only approach possible. There is another aspect, which is that they were captured by Russian separatists now. Russia, and they've been sentenced to death. Russia hasn't had the death penalty since the 1990s. Unless I'm mistaken, the last person executed in Russia was about 1994, 1995. So it's been a quarter of a century. That's in Russian law. You could get long prison sentences in Russian prisons or no picnics, but Russia doesn't actually have the death penalty. So if these separatists claim to be Russians and they're acting in Russia's name, then surely they should follow Russian law, and therefore the death penalty shouldn't apply. Anyway, I'm going to read out a bit of the report. Um, Kyiv's ambassador to the UK said Aidan Naslin and Sean Pinner had been a target because of London's support for Ukraine. Mr. Aslan, 28, from Nottinghamshire, and Mr. Pinner, 48, from Bedfordshire, were both serving in the Ukrainian armed forces in Mariupol at the time of their capture. They were sentenced to death with the third man, Moroccan national Sardin Brahim, by rulers of the breakaway pro-Russian Donetsk People's Republic, an entity in eastern Ukraine only recognized by Moscow. They were found guilty of committing actions aimed at seizing power and overthrowing the constitutional order of the Donetsk People's Republic in a court that is not internationally recognized. RIA Novosti said the three are said to face a firing squad. Vadim Prishtaiko, the Ukrainian ambassador, said, "It will be a swap. The important question is what will be the price for this, because the Russians were talking about some Ukrainian MPs being swapped for them, especially for those who I now understand were working for them for all these years." He told the BBC the men were our people and they were contracted to the Ukrainian military. Pro-Russian propaganda has attempted to portray them as foreign mercenaries. We expect Russians to remember that these are our people. Now they are our prisoners of war and should be treated as prisoners of war, the same way we are treating Russians who are in our captivity, he said. And that's something that needs to be pointed out. Russians have generally been treated very well by the Ukrainians. Russian prisoners of war. Remember early in the invasion, young Russian soldiers were given food and so, allowed to make calls home. That's how they've been treated. So, if Russia doesn't want to further damage its international reputation, it's already been absolutely damaged. They need to treat these men well. There was footage showing what looked like a kangaroo trial. Not surprisingly, they were behind bars. They were having to read out guilty, say that they were guilty. A few points of information on this. I understand Mr. Aslan is actually half Ukrainian. He'd been living in Ukraine for some years. So he is a British citizen, but he's also a Ukrainian citizen. That takes away the notion of being a mercenary. Sean Pinner, unfortunately, it will be hard to verify that because if he's a British national, I understand he's a former soldier and he joined the Ukrainian Foreign Legion, and technically he probably is a mercenary. But um, morally, I have no problem saying these men are heroes. I mean, during the Spanish Civil War, there were the international brigades. These men saw a country invaded and brutalized by its larger neighbor, and they wanted to act. That's the bottom line. Um, I will say that part of me was concerned that the Ukrainians, in their understandable need for international support, were maybe being a little bit, um, I don't want to say complacent, but perhaps the vetting wasn't too strong. Um, I have heard reports of young men who have went over there who have very little military experience and certainly very little actual battlefield experience. More seasoned soldiers have mentioned that. But in terms of the moral side of things, I think they're heroes. I admit I pondered on the idea. Now, I don't think I would be eligible because I have basic training in the Navy, but I never passed. And I think the embassy would look at that and reject me. But I seriously considered it. I knew the risks. I know it's a war zone. Um, But in the end of the day, Russia invaded Ukraine, not the other way around. I mean, it's not like these men have went into Russia and they've been captured in Moscow or Novosibirsk or St. Petersburg. Um, they're in Ukraine. Donetsk and Luhansk has not been internationally recognized. That's Ukrainian soil, except in the minds of Russian separatists. So, I mean, imagine if, like, say Russia suddenly invaded Italy and took Sicily and claimed it was Russian territory, or invaded Britain and claimed Northern Ireland was Russian territory. Some will say it's not the same thing. I think it is. Ukraine is a sovereign nation. It's an internationally recognized sovereign nation. And so I think this prisoner exchange is the best hope for these men. It's horrendous thinking what their families are going through. Of course, they've appealed to Boris Johnson. People say, "Oh, what did they expect? They've no right to do this." Well, of course, parents are going to appeal on behalf of their of their children. Of course, their extended families, their loved ones are going to do all they can. That's totally natural. Um, so I think those are the two approaches that are possible. Some sort of prisoner exchange. I mean, Ukraine, these men have risked their lives for Ukraine, so Ukraine owes them that in that sense. Um, but it's just disgusting what the Russian side are doing. I mean, contrast this to how Ukraine has treated its prisoners. They've been treated well. They've allowed to be make calls home. There's no death penalty. That is the contrast, despite the very clear war crimes that have been taking place um, in Bucha and elsewhere. Anyway, I'll leave it there because honestly, it's very depressing. I really sympathize with these guys because I believe they were motivated by what they saw, which was a powerful country led by a dictator invading a sovereign nation, brutalizing its people, not even recognizing its existence. That's why those making analogies with Iraq are wrong, because as wrong and as disastrous as the Iraq invasion was, Britain and America never questioned Iraq's actual existence as a nation state. They said they were liberating it from a dictator and make of that what you will, but they never said Iraq is not a country. That's the difference. Um, I'll leave it there, but I just hope, I really hope these men can be released. But if the worst comes to the worst and they are, God forbid, executed, then I think they will be remembered as heroes. And I hope they will be. And I hope their families can be proud of them. As for those snivelling, weaselly Putin stooges who pollute cyberspace, most of them have fake accounts. I just I don't even want to say what I think of them. I don't want to bring too much negativity into this, but let's just say I've got zero respect for them. There are others though, like I've noticed, and I'll just say this because I don't know if I'll be making another video anytime soon on the subject, but I've noticed a lot of Africans defending Putin and Russia. Um, and I don't know what that is about, whether they think that Russia's some sort of liberator against imperialism, despite the fact it's Russia acting like the imperialist force in this case. I don't know what it is, but the whole world is suffering because of Putin's decision. The whole world is suffering because Russia decided to, just like the whole world suffered because of the Chinese government's lies on COVID. Now the whole world is suffering from food supplies. Prices are rising everywhere. Um, this all comes down to Putin's decision. One man has destabilized the world, much like another notorious dictator in the 1930s. Um, but Africans are now starving because of those supplies. This is the direct result of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and there are other factors involved, but it has absolutely exacerbated the situation. And the world should hope for Ukraine to prevail. So those people who maybe are motivated by anti-Western sentiments, at least don't be useful idiots and support Russia.